Before we get started, there will be spoilers for Jujutsu Kaisen in the video to come. Well, here we are. My first foray into a new series in I don't even know how many years at this point. If you've been keeping an eye on my community posts, you'll have known this was coming. I mean, pretty much everyone guessed it right off the bat after the first and only explicit tease we dropped a couple of weeks ago now. Back in the day, just over a decade ago I think, both Naruto and Fairy Tail had staple positions on this channel as weekly series that I reviewed alongside Bleach, but eventually it just became untenable to run all of them at the same time like that, especially considering I was supposed to be studying too. Truth be told though, as the channel has grown, over the last 4 years or so, the idea of taking this channel and expanding it beyond Bleach into new territories has consistently been among the most requested things you, the community, have wanted to see. And it's something I've wanted to do as well, but I just couldn't find the right time to go for it. And to be honest, I was probably a little slow on pulling the trigger here as well. Now, I think in the future I want to continue expanding this channel into even more different series, so I'd love some recommendations down in the comments, but for the time being, let me give you some insight into my decision to go with Jujutsu Kaisen. I knew Jujutsu Kaisen was the series I wanted to tackle next, but I was struggling to decide when was best for both me and the channel. Over on the Bleach side of things, should I wait until the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime is over? I considered and thought about that a lot. After all, Bleach is and will forever be the main focus of this channel, and that's where I want to continue to dedicate the majority of my energy. It's simply my favourite series, and I love talking about it, as is hopefully pretty obvious by now. But I figured if I did that, I would well and truly miss the boat with Jujutsu Kaisen, and any other future series I decide to take a look at, especially considering the clock is rapidly running down on Jujutsu Kaisen as it is. So after spending a little too long deliberating, I just kind of decided to go for it, and here we are. If you're already a fan of Jujutsu Kaisen, it's great to have you. If you're not, but you're curious about the series anyway, I would absolutely recommend checking it out, especially if you're already a fan of Bleach. The two marry together quite well, I find, and while it manages to carve out its own style and feel, Jujutsu Kaisen definitely wears its inspiration on its sleeve, and I mean, I love that. Anyway, I thought we'd kick things off with a fairly simple video, one that helps you get to know me and my tastes regarding the series. Jujutsu Kaisen has an excellent cast of colourful and creative characters, from Jujutsu sorcerers and curse users to curse spirits and more, and in this video I'll be ranking my top 10 favourites of the bunch, of course with some honourable mentions to boot. There will be spoilers for the source material in the video as well, so you have been warned ahead of time. Anyway, let's dive right into the ranking. Like I said, we'll be starting things off with some honourable mentions, and first up we have the seldom seen Doctor of Jujutsu High, Shoko Ieri. Formerly a student in the same year as Satoru Gojo and Suguru Geto, Shoko is fabled for her skill in reverse curse technique, giving her access to healing capabilities the likes of which the vast majority of the cast can't even fathom, especially when she attempts to explain how she uses it. There's something understated about this character that I really enjoy. Her design is simple but very effective. In fact, I think I prefer the version in the source material with the considerably darker hair and the heavier bags under her eyes. But speaking of which, the heavy dark bags under her eyes and her penchant for smoking gives off the impression that she's constantly stressed and under pressure, barely getting enough sleep to get by, and Shoko has always been a sort of neutral party, never one to show too much emotion or investment in anything, capable of simply chatting to Geto even after his recent crimes come to light. But these days, I enjoy her role as a confidant of sorts for Jujutsu High, someone the sorcerers can all turn to when they're in need of serious help. There's a casual layer of darkness to her that I think is really cool, such as when she asks Gojo if she can take Yuji apart in the aftermath of his demise early on. It's not that she's cruel or even sociopathic, but she views everything from a very straightforward and almost business-like perspective. But Shoko isn't incapable of emotion either as she tries to ease Yuji's mind when it comes to the transfigured humans early on, and that's something she didn't have to do. Our next honourable mention is maybe a surprising one, a character who commands the screen or the page, and every time he appears in the story it is guaranteed to go completely off the rails. Ryomen Sukuna's mere appearance raises the stakes dramatically. But, ironically, for all of his immeasurable power, what I enjoy most about Sukuna are the more human elements. I like that he's always been disgusted by Yuji, considering him boring and beneath him, to the point where he relentlessly mocks him. That Sukuna holds so much power and simply chooses not to do something for his own amusement, like even attempting to save Junpei early in the story, is brutal to behold. In the face of perhaps Yuji's darkest, bleakest moment, maybe of the entire series, Sukuna simply laughs like a megalomaniacal madman, and I appreciate that devotion to just being a villain. In fact, I like that Jujutsu Kaisen sticks to its guns in that regard. Despite Sukuna's savagery early on, I wholeheartedly expected him to have some kind of change of heart towards the later stages of the series. The fact that not only does that not happen, but Sukuna is still the principal villain is commendable, and it avoids all of the expected cliches. Maybe the best thing about Sukuna, though, is the respect that he is capable of showing. Sure, the vast majority of the cast will never experience it, but for those that do, it's an incredible, enlightening moment. Sukuna dominates Jogo in a fight during the Shibuya incident arc, but still finds it in him to praise the cursed spirit in his last moments, because the King of Curses is well aware what an endorsement from him is actually worth. My final honourable mention goes to Kokichi Muta, more commonly known as Mechamaru. Honestly, I was struggling to decide who should get the 10th place spot, and Mechamaru came close to snatching it. Mechamaru is obviously incredibly unique, and that's the foremost interesting thing about him. Born with a sickly and frail, useless body, Kokichi is forced to live his entire life in darkness, attached to a network of tubes and wires to sustain himself. And yet due to this, he was also blessed with heavenly restriction, giving him boundless cursed energy that he's capable of wielding over a vast range. As a result, his puppet manipulation ability allows him to control cursed corpse puppets across huge distances. He goes to school under the guise of Ultimate Mechamaru, a robotic stand-in that comes with its own slate of abilities as well. Mechamaru's story, for being such a side character, is in my opinion one of the best written in the series. It's revealed that he was supplying information to the Disaster Curses in exchange for Mahito repairing his body, but they weren't allies. In fact, Mechamaru planned on killing them as soon as his body was restored, leading to an incredible fight between himself and Mahito that resulted in the student's death. There's a side to this character that you don't see much of either, however, and that's his tearful relationship with Miwa. They share feelings for one another, and Mechamaru's desire to gain a working body is in part to enable him to be with her, even if just for once, but it's ultimately not meant to be. Okay, but that brings us to the actual list itself, and in 10th place we have the second-year student, Panda. In a way that's probably similar to how I feel about Sajin Komamura, I just love the sheer absurdity that Panda's existence brings to the cast. There's just something innately hilarious about him, whether he's parkouring through the first anime opening, taking on other fighters, or talking as a dismembered head, which in its own way is actually weirdly grisly. While Panda doesn't have a cursed technique of his own, his body houses 3 distinct cores which enable him to alter his physical form and abilities. His Panda core is the most balanced of the 3, while his Gorilla core, which he refers to as his older brother's core, grants him raw power, transforming his body to resemble that of a gorilla at the same time. Panda's 3rd core, his Triceratops core, supposedly belongs to his older sister, but we haven't really seen it in action yet. So Panda is just a wholly unique character and an absolute ton of fun. His presence in the story lets you know off the bat that Jujutsu Kaisen isn't taking itself too too seriously, but at the same time the story makes the character work, and you, or at least I have, developed an attachment to him. Honestly, Panda kind of snatched the 10th place spot from Mechamaru, purely because the story of his relationship with his other cores is maybe one of the cutest things I've ever seen in my entire life. Mini Panda, as seen during what I think is basically just a rendition of Panda's inner world, as it were, after the destruction of his other two cores, and then after his fight with Kashimo, is just totally adorable and really elevated the character for me. Okay, but shifting gears somewhat now, in 9th place we have one of the series' main villains, and a member of the Disaster Curses. Jogo, the curse born from humanity's collective fear of fire and, more specifically, volcanic eruptions, another natural disaster that's capable of devastating lives. Now, I'll be honest, I actually like all of the disaster curses. They've each got great distinctive designs, and I appreciate their well-defined goal as a villainous faction, but Jogo is my favourite of the lot. Hanami and Dagon are a little underdeveloped, I think, and Mahito is actually a little annoying, to be totally honest. He's not the kind of character I thought he was going to be, and so Jogo definitely stands out on the top of these guys, at least for me anyway. First of all, his design is phenomenal. This squat, almost elderly looking curse who mutters and grumbles to himself, all while being the physical embodiment of a literal volcano, is a sight to behold. His charred and blackened teeth are an awesome touch as well. Jogo feels a little understated to me despite his immense power, and that might have something to do with the fact that he comes up against both Gojo and Sukuna throughout his tenure as a villain, two of the series' greatest powerhouses. But when he's allowed to let loose, even if only briefly, you get a feel for just how incredible he really is, capable of incinerating powerful sorcerers with a single blast of flame. And yes, even going so far as to summon a meteor because it wouldn't be an anime without one. Jogo desperately believes that curses are the true humans and wants to see them take their place in the world, and I love his commitment to that ideal. That's honestly probably my favourite thing about him, that quiet contemplation that enabled him to realise he didn't have to live in order to see the curses rise up, so long as his actions help herald in that new age. He was willing to die for his cause and for his allies, and his nature is perfectly at odds with his destructive appearance. That strange sense of human-like camaraderie between the disaster curses is a strangely very appealing aspect to them. Moving on though, in 8th place we have Hiromi Higuruma, a defense lawyer turned sorcerer, given the power to quite literally take the idea of justice into his own hands. For me, the combination of Higuruma's incredibly slick design and his domain expansion, Deadly Sentencing, are what nabbed him a spot here. His design is wonderfully simple, but that's what makes it so striking. That of a perpetually depressed, apathetic and exhausted man, dressed however in a sharp black suit, is an awesome juxtaposition. You get the sense that he is weary of the world, a little like Shoko perhaps, and the people around him are constantly concerned for his mental well-being. Higuruma has to face his clients whether he wins their trials for them or not, and has to deal with their emotional outbursts and take that verbal beating head on. All of this resulted in the awakening of his power around the time of the Culling game. But Deadly Sentencing is perhaps my favourite domain expansion in the series. Of course, the theming is top-notch, conjuring an enormous courtroom surrounded on all sides by wicked-looking dangling guillotines as Higuruma's opponent is put on trial for previous potential crimes they've committed. Behind Higuruma floats a massive shikigami called Judge Man, who must be convinced of the defendant's guilt in order to render a verdict, based on evidence submitted to Higuruma through the power of the technique. The technique is capable of stripping away cursed energy entirely, but in an even better twist, a verdict of the death penalty provides Higuruma with the Executioner's Sword, an almost angelic, holy-looking sword of light that guarantees death upon a single hit. Honestly, this whole character comes together extremely well for me. The design is fantastic, and the theme is brilliantly utilised. Now, as far as character transformations go within the series, there are few that match up to that of Maki Zenins. Initially introduced as the Zenin family failure due to her absolutely minuscule amount of cursed energy that left her unable to even see curses without the aid of her glasses, Maki persevered anyway, hoping to one day spite her family by becoming a great Jujutsu sorcerer herself. Rather than let her situation break her, Maki channels the hurt and prejudice she's faced from those around her into pure drive and ambition. While I've always liked her status as the underdog, despite her still having incredible physical prowess, Maki really comes into her own once granted heavenly restriction upon the death of her twin sister Mai. It's a touching sacrifice, and one that allows the surviving twin to completely shed her remaining cursed energy in favour of superhuman physical capabilities, turning Maki into a modern-day reincarnation of Toji Zenin himself. And as she turns her blade upon her abhorrent family, including her father who just tried to kill her himself, Maki transcends who and what she once was, becoming an unstoppable warrior in the process. It's a great character moment for someone whose development has already been so much fun to witness. That development is even reflected in her appearance, which is dramatically changed after she's incinerated by Jogo during the Shibuya incident, leaving her with terrible burn scars and much shorter hair. But all of this coalesces to give us an exceptionally cool and dynamic character. Maki has by far some of the best development of all the Jujutsu High students, and she's a hell of a lot of fun to watch. In 6th place, we have the fan-favourite poster child for the entire series, Satoru Gojo. Gojo is of course completely iconic, and probably the character a lot of people default to when imagining Jujutsu Kaisen. He's synonymous with the series. His look is excellent, from the shock of white hair to his icy crystalline blue eyes and blindfold combination. I'm not normally into characters who are so overwhelmingly strong as to be virtually unbeatable and nearly perfect in every way. Says the guy whose favourite Bleach character is Aizen. Okay, maybe I need to reevaluate that somewhat, but Gojo's ability, limitless and its varying forms, is extremely creative, taking the control and manipulation of space to unique, never-before-seen places. So while he's not my favourite character, Gojo is consistently entertaining, and I greatly enjoy him and his story. Hidden Inventory, or the Gojo's Past arc, is possibly my favourite arc of the entire series, though I'm not 100% certain about that. Gojo evolves from an arrogant, conceited, and even immoral young sorcerer to someone who grows to genuinely care for those weaker than him, while his tragic relationship with his best friend Geto helps to humanise this character a lot, as does his concern for and belief in his own students. Although Gojo doesn't like the bureaucracy of the goings-on behind the scenes of Jujutsu High and the politicking of their world, he wants to raise his students up on his shoulders in the hopes of making them great Jujutsu sorcerers, hoping to perhaps even find one to succeed him in the future. Okay, as we enter the top 5 now, Choso was a character that I took some time warming up to. I'll be honest, I found his brothers, Kechizu and Eso, somewhat off-putting at first. They were oddly alien for a character who was otherwise meant to be strangely sympathetic, but therein lies what makes Choso and his relationship with his brothers so profound. These 3 twisted, monstrous creations are introduced as villains, but in reality, they're victims as much as anyone else. Forced to live in isolation for 150 years with nothing but each other, Choso lives for his brothers, and they did the same. Despite being half-cursed spirits, they don't exhibit the same horrific tendencies, nor the same disdain for human life that other cursed spirits do. In a way then, Choso feels like the ultimate embodiment of the brothers and their bond. With their deaths, he's driven to seek furious revenge until he realises he's not as alone as he once thought, eventually joining up with Yuji and the others to try and bring down Kenjaku and later Sukuna too. And recently, and this is a pretty big spoiler, Choso's entire arc came to a close with one of the series' most sorrowful deaths yet, showing just how effectively he'd actually managed to be humanised. Plus, blood manipulation is one of Jujutsu Kaisen's coolest techniques, and Choso uses it expertly, resulting in several incredible fights, one of which was brought to life in unbelievable fashion in the anime. In 4th place, we have what was probably the toughest character for me to rank on this list. I knew I wanted them on here somewhere, I just couldn't decide where. In my opinion, this character's scenes are some of the most enjoyable in the series, and as someone who, generally speaking, loves the villains the most, Kenjaku stands out to me as one of Jujutsu Kaisen's absolute best. Kenjaku is diabolical, cruel, and downright mad, wanting to commit terrible atrocities out of nothing but a sinister curiosity born out of an endless life. There's an element of silliness to this villain as Kenjaku compares themselves to a toddler with a crayon and a blank sheet of paper. But that in itself is terrifying. And beneath Kenjaku's grandstanding veneer lies a manipulative, cold, and extraordinarily powerful monster, interested only in their own personal gain. I love the reveal of Kenjaku's true self to Gojo during the Shibuya incident. It sticks out to me as an iconic moment in the series when we discover that Geto's corpse is being piloted by this toothy brain of all things, and Kenjaku gets an incredible fight against Choso and Yuki as they try to defend Tengen from this madman. But I'm not sure how much of my enjoyment of Kenjaku stems from the fact they are basically Suguru Geto, only with a slightly altered, slightly wackier, and more chaotic personality. There's an inherent weirdness to discussing this character as well. What do we really know about Kenjaku at the end of the day? Who really are they? The answer is we know next to nothing about this enigma, this 1,000-year-old sorcerer who can transplant their brain into different corpses, aside from the fact that they have engineered much of what transpires in the modern day, right the way down to Yuji's own birth. There's a lot about Kenjaku and the way they come across in the story that does remind me of Aizen, so maybe that helps a little bit as well. Okay, in third place we have Kento Nanami, an early mentor to Yuji, a prime example of a powerful grade 1 sorcerer, and simply put, one of the most badass characters in the series. Nanami's cursed technique ratio is pretty cool, but it doesn't really blow me away. Therefore, Nanami makes it this high on my list purely by the strength and quality of his character. Nearly always dressed in impeccably sharp business wear, much of Nanami's personality and attitude to life stem from his time as a salaryman, where the weight of the mundanity of a 9-to-5 crushed his spirit. In many ways, Nanami feels like the polar opposite of Gojo. He's blunt, straightforward, and seemingly joyless. Despite his almost robotic-like stoicism, Nanami is very human at heart. He's spurred on by the smallest of appreciations and simply wants a job that he believes is worth doing in the grander scheme of things. I'm a huge fan of the creativity behind his theming too, much in the same way the most was made of Higuruma's theme as a lawyer earlier. Nanami's binding vow overtime limits his cursed energy during the hours that he is on the clock, before being able to amplify it once the working day is over. It's very clever. Of every character death in the series to date, and there have been a lot, Nanami's was the one that hit me the hardest. He was absolutely the character that I was the saddest to see go, even if he does get some incredible moments beforehand. Taking the silver medal, my second favourite character in Jujutsu Kaisen is none other than Kangdu but much cooler, and the sorcerer killer himself, Toji Fushiguro. Like I said earlier, the Gojo's past arc is perhaps my favourite in the story, and Toji is a huge reason why I think that flashback is so successful. An assassin for hire who was born into the powerful Zenin family of sorcerers, Toji has no cursed energy of his own, leading to his abuse at the hands of his prideful household. Unlike Maki, however, who strove to become a powerful sorcerer of her own in spite of their family, Toji was inspired instead to rebel against the world of sorcerers, wanting to prove himself better. Thanks to his heavenly restriction, which totally eliminated his cursed energy, Toji has superhuman fighting capabilities and unbelievably honed senses, enabling him to dominate even the most powerful of sorcerers who can't read his presence at all, leading him to feel invisible. Toji's fighting style gives his battles an incredible sense of physicality. In fact, I think both of his fights against Gojo and his fight with Geto during the flashback arc are perhaps two of the best in the entire series. There's just something extremely cool about a man with no power of his own rising up to take down two of the strongest Jujutsu sorcerers the world had ever known, and basically without breaking a sweat. I mean, I just absolutely adore the way he brutalizes Gojo, only to turn around and kind of say, it looks like I'm getting the hang of things again. That is just so awesome. In that moment, he dismantles the society that looked down upon him, and he does so in such a clean way. But there is some humanity to be found in this gambling mercenary. He's the father of Megumi Fushiguro, and after being resurrected briefly during the Shibuya incident, which was also really nice as well, it was great to see him again, what remained of Toji killed himself to protect his son, and was fleetingly happy to hear that Megumi wasn't using the surname Zenin in his last moments. Despite Toji having very little screen time in the story, he left an enormous impact on me and the characters around him. In fact, a minute ago I said that Nanami was my saddest death. Toji could be up there as well. But in first place, taking the top spot on my first ever Jujutsu Kaisen ranking, is my favourite character in the series, Suguru Geto. Gojo's former best friend turned curse user after deciding to rid the world of non-sorcerers, or monkeys in his words. Geto kind of had it all in my opinion. His curse technique, curse spirit manipulation, is incredible and allows for some extremely diverse and creative fight scenes, while also forwarding his character development in unexpected ways, which we'll get to. The design he takes on after turning his back on Jujutsu High, that of a Buddhist priest, is the best in the entire series. His relationship with Gojo, but even more importantly the dark and horrific experiences he goes through that eventually lead him down a path of evil, culminate in an incredibly well-rounded villain. Both understandable and detestable in equal measure, Geto eventually decides he wants to purge the world of non-sorcerers after several deplorable acts tip him over the brink and into oblivion. He tries to be righteous in a world that makes that increasingly difficult. Losing Riko Amanai to Toji in such a cold-blooded way while her death is then applauded causes Geto to begin to sway from his ideals, while his curse technique involves him ingesting curses regularly, something that makes him feel grotesque despite it being a horrible routine for him, and you have to imagine that affected his mental health in ways that we could never really see. When he finds non-sorcerers treating two girls with cursed energy like animals, Geto slaughters the entire village, rescues the girls, and finally chooses his destiny. That as the worst curse user in history, deciding to fight for sorcerers against all others. This pits him against Jujutsu High and his former friends and allies, leading to an incredible battle which ultimately results in his death at the hands of Gojo himself. He's an excellent character, and to be honest, it's a huge shame that he's killed off before the present-day storyline can even begin. But really, the fact that I was left wanting so much more can only be a good sign. Perhaps in a sense that is why I like Kenjaku too. He allows Geto to live on, even if it's in a twisted, macabre way. Plus, Geto's maximum technique is a reference to my favourite Junji Ito story, and that's just an incredible little detail. Alright, but that's it for my ranking, my first video on Jujutsu Kaisen. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. How do you feel about my list of characters, and what is your list of your favourite characters from the series? I'm going to have to change up this background at some point, I think, but for now we're going to leave it as it is because, well, there might be some changes coming in the future. But yeah, as always, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I feel it was a good way to ease us into talking about a brand new series, giving you the chance to get to know me and my tastes a little better. I'd love your feedback as well, and like I said earlier, if you're already a fan of Jujutsu Kaisen, then it's great to have you, but if you're not, I really would recommend checking it out. I think you'll find something to love there. Let me know either here or over on the community post that just went live too, what you'd like to see from me regarding this series. I know the story is pretty close to being done, but I'm considering weekly chapter reviews, something I haven't done for, well, years at this point, but I think it could be fun, and better late than never, right? But that's it from me, guys. As always, I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I want to say a massive thank you to my supporters over on Patreon, and give them a huge shout out as well. If you like what I do here over on YouTube and you want to support me there, you can also get your name in the credits just like this, and you can get every video I release absolutely ad-free. Alright guys, but until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.